Have you ever let pride steal decades from you? Helen Carter stood outside room 304 of St. Mary's Hospital in Denver, Colorado, staring at the door she'd sworn she'd never walk through. Behind it lay her sister, Margaret, dying of lung cancer, with days, maybe hours left. They hadn't spoken in 40 years. 40 years of silence over something that started with a single argument when they were young and stupid and convinced they were right. The nurse touched Helen's shoulder gently. "She's been asking for you. She doesn't have much time." Helen's hand trembled as it reached for the door handle. 40 years. Half a life spent hating the person who used to be her best friend. This is the story of two sisters who loved each other, destroyed each other, and had only one chance left to make it right. Helen and Margaret grew up as close as sisters could be in a small house in suburban Denver. Helen was older by 2 years, protective, responsible, always looking out for her little sister. Margaret was the wild one, impulsive, passionate, always following her heart, even when it led her into trouble. They shared a bedroom until Helen left for college, shared clothes, secrets, dreams. They were each other's person, the way sisters often are when the age gap is small enough to be friends, but large enough for one to be a guide. Helen was 23 and Margaret 21. When everything fell apart, it was 1985. Helen had just gotten engaged to Thomas Wright, a steady accountant with a good job and sensible plans for the future. Margaret was dating Danny Martinez, a musician who played in bars and had dreams bigger than his bank account. The trouble started when Margaret got pregnant. She and Danny weren't married. Danny wanted to keep the baby, wanted to get married, wanted to make it work. But Margaret was terrified. She was 21, working as a waitress, barely making rent. She wasn't ready to be a mother. "I'm thinking about adoption," Margaret told Helen one night, crying in their parents' kitchen. "I can't do this. I'm not ready." Helen, who'd always protected her sister, who'd always known what was best, said what she thought was the right thing. "You can't give up your baby. Maggie, that's your child. You'd regret it forever. Danny loves you. He wants to marry you. This could be good." "But I don't want to marry Danny," Margaret sobbed. "I love him, but I'm not ready for this. I am not ready for marriage and a baby and giving up everything I wanted to do with my life." "Then you shouldn't have been so careless," Helen said, and the words came out harsher than she'd meant them. "You need to take responsibility for your choices." Margaret's face went cold. "Like you mean? Maureen Sieve Boren Thomas, because he's responsible, living the life mom and dad want instead of what you want. At least I'm not running away from my responsibilities." "No, you're just running away from living." The argument escalated. Words were said, cruel, cutting words designed to hurt. Because they both knew exactly where to aim, Helen called Margaret selfish and irresponsible. Margaret called Helen uptight and judgmental. Their parents tried to intervene, but the damage was done. "You know what?" Margaret finally said, tears streaming down her face. "I don't need your judgment. I don't need you telling me what to do with my life. I'm done." "Fine," Helen shot back. "Make your own mistakes then. Don't come crying to me when it all falls apart." "I won't. I promise you. I will never ask you for anything again." Margaret walked out that night. She married Danny the next week in a courthouse ceremony. She had the baby, a daughter named Emma, and she never spoke to Helen again. Helen tried to reach out once, about 3 months later, when the anger had cooled and she'd realized how stupid the fight had been. But Margaret wouldn't take her calls, returned her letters unopened. When Helen showed up at Margaret's apartment, Danny answered the door and said quietly, "She doesn't want to see you. Please respect that." "It was just a fight," Helen said. "We're sisters. We can work through this." "You told her she was selfish for considering adoption. You told her she needed to take responsibility like it was some kind of punishment. Do you have any idea how scared she was? She needed support, not judgment. She needed her sister, and you weren't there. I was trying to help. You were trying to control. There's a difference, please." Helen married Thomas that summer. Margaret didn't come to the wedding. Helen had nieces and nephews over the years. Margaret had 3 more children after Emma. But Helen never met them. At family gatherings, they navigated carefully. One sister arriving as the other left, their parents begged them to reconcile. But both were too stubborn, too proud, too convinced the other should apologize first. "She said terrible things to me," Helen would say. "She said terrible things too," their mother would reply. "But your sisters, life is too short for this." But 40 years proved that life was actually very long. Long enough to build entirely separate lives. Long enough to miss births and birthdays and milestones. Long enough for the hurt to calcify into something so hard it felt like it could never break. Helen had 2 children with Thomas, both sons, who grew up knowing they had an aunt they'd never met. Cousins they didn't know. Margaret's 4 children knew the same. 2 families that should have been one, separated by pride and stubbornness and the inability to say "I'm sorry." Their father died 15 years ago. At the funeral, Helen and Margaret sat on opposite sides of the church. They didn't speak, didn't even make eye contact. Their mother sobbed not just for her dead husband, but for her daughters who couldn't put aside their anger even for one day. Their mother passed 5 years later. Same thing. Separate sides of the church, no words exchanged. The family whispered about the Carter-sister feud like it was some kind of curse that couldn't be broken. And now, 40 years after that fight in the kitchen, Helen stood outside room 304, knowing this was the last chance, the final opportunity to break the cycle before it was too late. She pushed open the door. The woman in the bed barely looked like Margaret anymore. Cancer had stolen her hair, hollowed her cheeks, left her a shadow of the vibrant, wild sister Helen remembered. But when Margaret's eyes opened and found Helen standing in the doorway, there was a flash of recognition that made Helen's breath catch. "Helen?" Margaret's voice was barely a whisper, ravaged by the cancer in her lungs. "Yeah, Maggie, it's..." S. 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 Neither spoke for a long moment. The machines beeped. The 4th dripped. Outside the room, the hospital continued its routine. But inside, time seemed suspended. Finally, Margaret said, "You came." "Of course, I came. You're my sister. I wasn't sure you would. 40 years is a long time." Helen moved closer to the bed, each step feeling like walking through water. "Too long. Way too long." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I've thought about calling you so many times over the years, especially when the kids were little. Emma asked about you when she was 8, wanted to know why she had an aunt she'd never met. I didn't know what to tell her. I thought about calling too," Helen admitted, sitting in the chair beside the bed. "Every birthday, every Christmas. But I didn't know how, didn't know what to say. How do you bridge 40 years? You start with, 'I'm sorry,'" Margaret had sighed, and a tear rolled down her cheek. "I'm sorry, Helen, for what I said, for being so stubborn, for wasting 40 years being angry instead of being sisters." The words broke something in Helen's chest. 40 years of armor, 40 years of telling herself she was right, 40 years of anger, it all cracked and fell away. "I'm sorry too," Helen said, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry for judging you, for thinking I knew what was best for your life, for saying such cruel things, for letting my pride keep us apart all these years. We were both stupid," Margaret said with a weak smile. "Young and stupid and convinced we knew everything. We wasted so much time, Maggie. I know. That's the hardest part, looking back and seeing all the moments we missed. I wasn't at your wedding. You weren't at mine. Our kids grew up without each other. Mom and Dad died, heartbroken that we wouldn't reconcile." Helen reached out and took Margaret's hand, so small now, so fragile. Nothing like the strong hands she remembered from their childhood. "Tell me about your kids. Please." Tell me about the family I should have known. So Margaret did, her voice weak, but growing stronger with emotion as she talked about Emma, now a high school teacher with 2 kids of her own. About Jake, who worked in construction and was about to have his 3rd child. About Sarah, who'd just started medical school. About little Tommy, who wasn't so little anymore at 35, running his own restaurant in Boulder. They're good people, Margaret said with pride. Danny and I, we struggled at first. We were so young, so broke, but we made it work. He still plays music on weekends. We've been married 39 years. That's longer than Thomas and me, Helen said quietly. We divorced 10 years ago. Turns out marrying safe doesn't guarantee happiness. I'm sorry. I didn't know. How could you? We stopped sharing our lives 40 years ago. Helen squeezed Margaret's hand gently. But I want to know now. Tell me everything. Tell me what I missed. They talked for hours. Or what felt like hours, but might have been less. Time moved strangely in that hospital room. Margaret talked about her life, her family, the struggles and joys. Helen shared her own stories, her sons, Michael and David, her divorce, her career as a teacher, her life that had felt complete until this moment when she realized how much had been missing. Do you regret it? Helen finally asked. Keeping the baby, Mary and Danny. Margaret smiled. Not for a second. You know what's funny? You were right that I'd regret giving her up for adoption. Primera, Wulhab. But I was also right that I wasn't ready. It was hard, so hard those first few years. But it was my choice to make, and it turned out to be the right one for me. I just needed someone to support that choice without judging it. I should have supported you instead of trying to control you. And I should have forgiven you instead of cutting you off for 40 years. We both messed up, Helen. We both let pride destroy something precious. Margaret's breathing became more labored. The nurse came in, checked her vitals, gave Helen a meaningful look. Not much time left. When they were alone again, Margaret said, Helen, I need to tell you something. I wanted to call you so many times. I wrote letters I never sent. I'd pick up the phone and dial your number and hang up before it rang. I dreamed about reconciling, about our kids knowing each other, about being sisters again. But I was scared. Scared you'd reject me. Scared too much time had passed. Scared that the hurt was too deep to heal. Me too, Helen whispered. All of it. Me too. Do you think we can forgive each other? Really forgive each other? Not just say the words, but meant him. Helen looked at her sister dying. Fragile, with only hours left, and realized with devastating clarity that forgiveness was the only thing that mattered now. Not being right. Not pride. Not the original argument or who said what 40 years ago. Just forgiveness. Just not letting Margaret die with this chasm between them. Yes, Helen said firmly. I forgive you, Maggie. Completely. For everything, and I need you to forgive me too. I do, Margaret said, tears streaming down her face. I forgive you. Love you. I've always loved you, even when I was too stubborn to show it. Helen leaned forward and did something she hadn't done in 40 years. She hugged her sister, carefully, mindfully of the 4 lines in the fragile body, but fully. And Margaret, despite her weakness, hugged her back. I love you too, Helen whispered. I'm so sorry we wasted so much time. But I'm here now. I'm Mary. They held each other and cried for the lost years. For the missed moments. For the stubbornness that had stolen for decades from them. But also for this moment. This final chance to be sisters again. To remember what they'd meant to each other before pride and anger got in the way. Margaret's breathing became shallower. The machines beeped more insistently. Helen called for the nurse, who came in with Margaret's family Danny. Looking older, but still with the kind eyes. Helen remembered, and for adults who had to be Margaret's children, Helen's nieces and nephews she'd never met. They stood around the bed, and Margaret looked at each of them with such love. It broke Helen's heart. Helen's here, Margaret whispered to her family. My sister. Finally. Danny squeezed Helen's shoulder. "Thank you for coming. I should have come years ago," Helen said. "You're here now. That's what matters." Margaret's eyes found Helen's one last time. "Promise me something." "Anything. Don't let our kids make a mistake. Let them know each other. Let them be family." "I promise," Helen said. "I swear it." "And Helen, when you think about me, ... remember the good parts. Remember when we were young and everything was possible. Remember we were best friends before we were enemies. Remember we found our way back to each other in the end." "I will," Helen promised through tears. "I'll remember all of it." Margaret smiled a real smile, peaceful and content. "I'm glad you're here. I didn't want to go with this between us." "It's not between us anymore," Helen said. "It's over. We're sisters again." "We always were," Margaret whispered. "We just forgot for a while." Those were her last words. She closed her eyes, still holding Helen's hand, and slipped away peacefully with her family surrounding her. The forgiveness finally achieved, Helen stayed for the funeral. Met her nieces and nephews properly, held her great-nieces and great-nephews, exchanged phone numbers, and promised to stay in touch. Emma, Margaret's oldest, pulled Helen aside and said, "She talked about you. You know, more than she probably should have. She missed you every single day." "I missed her too," Helen said, "and I'll regret wasting those 40 years for the rest of my life. But you came at the end." That meant everything to her. She died at peace because you came. Today, 3 years after Margaret's death, Helen is 76 years old. She has dinner once a month with Margaret's family. She's gotten to know her nieces and nephews, has watched her great-nieces and great-nephews grow. She keeps a photograph of Margaret on her mantel, two of them as children, arms around each other, smiling like the best friends they used to be. She thinks about Margaret every day, about the 40 years they lost to pride and stubbornness, about the final hours they had together when forgiveness finally broke through, about how that brief moment of reconnection couldn't erase the decades of separation, but somehow made them matter less. Helen has learned something about forgiveness that she tries to share with anyone who will listen. It's never too late to forgive, but it might be too late to rebuild what you lost. She got to forgive her sister before she died, and that's a grace not everyone receives. But she doesn't get back those 40 years, doesn't get back the relationship they could have had, the memories they could have made, the family their children could have grown up knowing. Forgiveness healed the wound, but it didn't give back the time. So Helen tells people, don't wait. Whatever arguments you're having, whatever hurt you're holding on to, whatever pride is keeping you from reaching out, let it go. Let it go before it's too late. Because 40 years can pass in what feels like a moment, and then suddenly, you're re-standing at someone's deathbed wishing you'd been brave enough to forgive them decades ago. Forgiveness at the end is better than never, but forgiveness while there's still time to rebuild is the real gift. Have you ever let pride steal years from someone you love? Have you ever held on to hurt so long it became part of who you are? Sometimes we think we have all the time in the world to make things right, but we don't. Time runs out, people die. Opportunities for reconciliation disappear. Don't wait for a deathbed to forgive. Don't wait until it's almost too late. Reach out today, make that call, write that letter. Forgive while there's still time to rebuild what was broken. Because forgiveness at the end is bittersweet, it brings peace, but it can't give back what was lost. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more stories about forgiveness, family, and the precious nature of time. Share in the comments. Have you reconciled with someone after years of separation? Or are you still waiting, hoping there will be time? Don't wait. Time is the one thing we can never get back.